But is this all really that strange? A mysterious object that grants monstrous power and displays an overwhelming level of growth. It's only natural that everyone begins to research this red ore, and hence, many experiments were conducted on it and the research was eventually successful. Not only that, the researchers also managed to increase the amplification rate of this red ore by several times as well. But therein lies the problem. In the search for power, they all overlooked one thing. One became unable to control that immense power. This delivered a major blow to the project, and ultimately, all research was suspended not long after. On the other hand, Li Zhongyang is already quite aware of the reasons for the experiment's failure. In his mind, he proclaims that lunacy is a poison at the end of it all, although that isn't something that can be figured out by research. Spoken like a man with hands-on experience. In addition, there has only ever been one person in history who became able to control that lunacy, that being none other than the mighty Hercules. However, Inev still has some perplexing news up his sleeve. Horus personally used himself as a subject in the red ore experiments. He reveals, leaving Li Zhongyang speechless. He wonders why on earth the successor of a massive underground organization, such as the Nile, would use himself as a test subject. Nevertheless, Inev continues, explaining that, despite everyone's attempts to dissuade him, Horus was determined and underwent the experiments. However, this still doesn't satisfy Li Zhongyang's curious nature. He asks why Horus was trying to gain the power of the red ore, and after stalling for a while, Inev claims that was because of Set. Apparently, Horus is the rightful heir of the Nile organization. However, Set wanted to control it by himself. Due to this, Osiris and Set often argue with each other, but Set was not a mere pushover. He could not be taken lightly, and in order to stop Set and his antics, Horus began seeking more power. Hearing all this, Li Zhongyang once again gets lost in thought and questions if it is really that dangerous to let Set end up as the Nile's top brass. From what he can see, Set doesn't really seem like a bad guy, and he asks if Set was only targeted due to his ambition to attain the throne for himself. How would you know? You just met the guy like a day ago. To Li Zhongyang, if this battle is just a hidden fight over Nile's control, he wants no part of it. Alas, that is not the case. As per Inev, Horus is a righteous man and planned to hand over the throne to Set, but he suddenly began having some doubts. All of a sudden, they hear a familiar voice behind them. So the two of you have met, this voice proclaims. Hearing this, both hunters look back only to find Set walking toward them. Seeing him here, Li Zhongyang is left confused and wonders if Set might have followed Inev to this location. But that simply cannot be. Merlin's barrier is still in effect, and there is no way for anyone to get past it. But that only leaves one possibility. Set was right here since the start. Surprisingly, the leader of the Nile apologizes for unintentionally eavesdropping on their conversation, but claims he has something crucial to ask Inev. Even Set knows Horus planned to hand over the throne to him, but nevertheless, he still wanted to get his hands on this dangerous red ore and its power, all for the sake of controlling him. Set questions about why someone who is so willing to give up the leadership role would go so far to obtain power, and in response, Inev reveals Horus said that there is someone else behind you. Looks like the cat is finally out of the bag. Hearing this, Li Zhongyang is left shocked, whereas Set's face gets painted with distress. He asks Inev how many others Horus has told this to, but as far as Inev knows, he's the only one. Right before Horus underwent the experiments, he told this to him, and no one else was present there. Of course, it may be that Horus told this to someone else beforehand, but Inev has no way of knowing that. On the other hand, Li Zhongyang notices that Set has become anxious all of a sudden, leaving him to believe Horus's doubts were correct. With this, he suggests Inev leave this place and head back first, stating he will think about Horus's treatment at length later, though he cannot guarantee anything, so it is better to not get his hopes up. Even Set orders him to head back, and after thanking Li Zhongyang, Inev takes his leave. But as soon as Inev gets out of the picture, Set immediately begins baring his fangs toward Li Zhongyang. Obviously, this isn't what Li Zhongyang wants, and he tells him to stop, thinking it would be better if they could talk before letting their fists communicate. A good call if you ask me, and Set has the same thing in mind. There is something we need to talk about, he announces. Consequently, the both of them sit down and begin chatting, where Set reveals he was keeping an eye on Li Zhongyang. Obviously, our boy was aware of this, though he didn't know he was so close. Nonetheless, deciding not to waste their time, Li Zhongyang gets right onto the topic. Is the one behind Set Asgard. To his knowledge, Baldur has already met with a spy, and since Set is after the throne, it is possible he joined hands with Asgard to achieve his goals. And despite this not being entirely far-fetched, it is far from the real truth. As per Set, he isn't a spy or anything. Rather, he and Asgard have more of a mutual relationship where they help each other out. Regardless, then who is the person behind Set? Who the hell is the one controlling you from the shadows? Lee Jong-young questions. However, Set has had enough of the questioning. Weren't you the one who suggested talking first? Suddenly, he unleashes an intense aura, commenting on how Lee Jong-young is just like what the rumors say, daring. Pulling out his sword, he wonders if, since he let Inv live, he should kill the foe in front of him. In response, Lee Jong-young too gets ready for a brawl. However, he is still concerned over the fact that there is a man who is capable of controlling the head of an entire organization, that too from the shadows. Not to mention, currently he is faced off against a real powerhouse, the strongest hunter in Egypt. There is no chance of winning. I might have to risk my life here, he remarks. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Took you long enough. Meanwhile, Set could not be more excited. Making a sinister expression, he reveals that he didn't just happen upon the red ore and, in the blink of an eye, moves into attack. Nevertheless, from Lee Jong-young's perspective, it looks as if Lee Jong-young has disappeared from sight, and the next thing he knows, Set has already closed the distance and is ready to slice his opponent's head off. Luckily, just in the nick of time, Lee Jong-young manages to evade the strike, leaving even Set surprised by his reaction time. What's more, using this, he once again creates one more distance between himself and his opponent. In his mind, although it was only for just a brief moment, he was able to clearly see Set's attack. And this is all thanks to Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table Council. As per him, if it weren't for them and all their duels, he might not have been able to dodge the attacks. On the other hand, seeing his display, Set just gets more and more hyped for the battle. Just as he thought, Lee Jong-young really is incredible. Geez, dude, get a room or something. There, he also reveals that he didn't just happen upon the red ore, rather it was given to him by that person. Hearing this, Lee Jong-young's mind begins going 1,000 miles per hour, wondering just who that person could be. Nonetheless, Set continues to talk. He recalls the time Lee Jong-young asked him what he would do once he became king, asking if he had figured out the answer to this. But in response, Lee Jong-young just announces, "You are a fake." To him, it was pathetic that he even considered Set to be like him for even a second. In his mind, he recalls the stories about a hunter that was notorious for making others tremble with fear. A hunter who dared to change things with his infamy, the Demon King. At first, when Lee Jong-young saw Set, he was reminded of the Demon King, but now, he cannot be more sure that he was wrong. He claims that the reason Set wants to take control over Nile, the reason he wants to become king, is because he wants to become a man who can do whatever he wants. In other words, a dictator. And what's so wrong with that? Hearing these words, Set suddenly goes all emotionless. However, a moment later, a shit-eating grin covers his entire face and he begins laughing out loud like a maniac, revealing that Lee Jong-young is correct. With this, both of them decide to call it quits for now, and the next morning soon arrives. There, Lee Jong-young is sitting around in his lodging, recalling and pondering over the conversation he had yesterday with Set. He wonders if Asgard is aware of who is behind Set. In his mind, if Asgard wasn't aware of this, there is no way Set would have just let him go so easily. However, it is also possible Set just thought Lee Jong-young wasn't going to oust him to his crew. Well, that might actually be a good idea. Do it. All of a sudden, In-chang, in her cute pajamas, comes into the room. Apparently, she has something important to share with Lee Jong-young and tells him that something seems off to her about Set. She doesn't think he is actually a good guy. Hearing this, Lee Jong-young asks why that is, and she herself is not too sure. It's just a gut feeling she has. To her, the real Set is not how he presented himself earlier in the city, and it felt as if he was merely acting. This chick really is a detective. Sherlock Holmes better get into contact with her. This leaves Lee Jong-young surprised. Even he realized Set's true colors after confronting him yesterday, but she was able to reach the same conclusion on her intuition alone. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the door to their room smashes open and Baldur comes rushing in, accusing Lee Jong-young and asking what the hell he did. Of course, Lee Jong-young plays dumb, claiming he has no idea what Baldur is on about. However, Baldur is not convinced. He reveals that the informant he was speaking to was none other than Set, who has, for some weird reason, decided to stop exchanging information with Asgard. To him, this means it must have something to do with the underdog. So what the hell did you do? He questions with an infuriated look. Poor Lee Jongyun, getting blamed for everything. But I guess it was his fault this time. But Lee Jongyun announces that he has not done anything yet. The more important thing is what he is about to do. He proclaims that we are joining the Nile's dispute, leaving both Inchong and Balder confused and shocked. Regardless, later that day, the three Korean hunters head to the Nile organization's headquarters, where they are welcomed by Bastet, along with a group of Nile foot soldiers. Seeing her, Lee Jongyun reveals he has come here today as the representative of Asgard. However, Bastet already knew this since Asgard already informed her of this. With this, she begins to lead them inside the headquarters, making Lee Jongyun happy that his plan to use Odin seems to be working perfectly. As planned, they will now be able to get to the central part of the Nile with ease, and the Korean hunters begin following her. As they venture deeper into the headquarters, they happen upon Set. There, seeing Lee Jongyun, Set makes a rather sinister and ominous expression, leaving Lee Jongyun on high alert. Set's expression reinforces that he needs to carry out his plan before it's too late. And so, all of a sudden, he calls out to Bastet, asking her where Horus is. However, as soon as he poses this question, Bastet begins turning hostile, and Lee Jongyun explains he wants to try and treat Horus. Suddenly, Enev, along with his partner Numik, appears on site. His arrival makes Bastet even more perplexed, and she asks what he is doing here. As a result, Enev suddenly bows down in front of her, and using his influence as one of Nile's aides, he tries to push Lee Jongyun's agenda further. Please allow the underdog to treat Horus, he requests Bastet. And the next thing you know, the entire group is running as fast as they can. As it turns out, Bastet has granted Enev's requests and is currently leading them all to Horus. On the way, Enev thanks her for believing in him, but Bastet just hopes that her decision isn't wrong. On the other hand, Balder is thinking about what his next move is going to be. As per him, if Lee Jongyun is unable to save Horus, then they all will meet their end here, of course, including the Korean hunter. As a result, he needs to be ready for anything, planning to use the underdog in order to restore the relationship between Nile and Asgard if need be. And how do you plan on doing that? With this, they continue their attempted escape, and Inchong asks what the chances of them getting found are. However, Bastet reveals that they have already been located by the others. More importantly, she questions if Lee Jongyun will really be able to save Horus. Alas, that is not entirely sure. Although he cannot say for certain, Lee Jongyun promises to do his best. In his mind, he knows that if he fails here, there is no way for them to stop Set. Eventually, they head closer to the center of the headquarters, where they are confronted by other hunters of the Nile. Seeing them getting in their way, Bastet tries to avoid a fight, claiming she doesn't want to harm fellow hunters from the same organization as her. Meanwhile, the hunters are shocked to see one of their commanders here with the invaders and try to convince her to give up. They state it isn't too late for Bastet yet. If she hands over the invaders and confesses her wrongdoings, she can still be accepted by the organization and get off with light punishment. Alas, before they can ever finish their sentence, she jumps in. In the blink of an eye, she knocks them all out, sending them deep into slumber. So much for not attacking fellow hunters, but whatever. However, Inchong is not too pleased upon seeing this. What are you doing? She questions. From what she could see, these hunters believed in Bastet and could have helped them. Nevertheless, this is exactly why Bastet did what she did. Obviously, the bird brain Inchong is confused as to what she means. And while calming her down, Lee Jongyun explains that Bastet was being considerate of them. If, in case, they are unable to save Horus, the others who allied themselves with Bastet would also be placed in danger. Understanding this, Inchong apologizes for being short-sighted. I mean, you should understand this sort of stuff by now. You're one of the strongest hunters in Korea after all. On the other hand, Lee Jongyun is really impressed by the necklace Merlin gave him, remarking on how it can not only translate the language for him, but rather his comrades as well. We have that too. We call it Google Translate. Regardless, they continue their sprint and ultimately reach a large door. There, Bastet reveals that Horus is right beyond these doors and asks Numik, Enev's partner, if she would be willing to help her protect this place while the others venture inside. But Numik doesn't look to be into the idea. All of a sudden, Enev chimes in. He thanks Numik for believing in him, but doesn't want her to get into any danger. As such, if she doesn't want to head in farther, he tells her it is alright for her to go back. However, these words just piss Numik off, and she decides to stay with Bastet and not allow anyone to go past them. Even Bastet notices that she seems determined all of a sudden. And so, the doors open and all the hunters begin heading inside. Suddenly, Nuna calls out to Inev, telling him if you succeed, be with me, with a flustered look on her face. Cute. In response, Inev tells her not to worry. He announces that he will definitely succeed with their task. Seeing all this, both In-chang and Lee Jongyang are touched, talking about how they really can't fail now. Have to wingman our boy Inev. Consequently, the group heads even deeper until they finally reach the heart of the Nile. There, they find a woman waiting for the group, claiming she knew they would come to find her son. And this woman is none other than Lady Isis, a name Lee Jongyang is familiar with. Apparently, Lady Isis is the wife of Osiris, the ruler of the Nile, and the mother of the one he needs to treat, Horus. This is Horus's mother. Can you be my mommy too? He also mentions how Isis is one of the 3 strongest in the entire organization. But from the looks of it, she is not too happy about the group's arrival. Don't come any closer. She warns them all while erecting a barrier around her and her son. Seeing this, even Lee Jongyang is left perplexed. From the immense energy coming out of the barrier, he realizes that they won't be able to get closer to Isis by any normal means, commenting on how the Nile still had such a monster in hiding. But Inev refuses to give up. He humbly asks Isis to let them treat Horus. In response, Isis talks about how she is aware Horus thinks very highly of Inev. She also knows Inev was constantly trying to find a person who could save her son. As such, she questions, do you really believe that man can save my son? And, as confident as ever, he replies that he strongly believes so. He has never met a man like Lee Jongyang and wholeheartedly believes he will be capable of saving the future leader. Consequently, Isis then turns her attention toward Lee Jongyang, asking him if he will really save her son. However, out of nowhere, Lee Jongyang refuses, leaving In-chang and Balder in utter disbelief. Even Isis is left perplexed by this, but he continues talking, announcing, I do not believe I can save him. Then why the heck did you even come here? Talk about a party pooper. Luckily, before Isis decides to turn them all into mush, Lee Jongyang explains to her that he will only try to treat Horus. Hearing this, Isis calms down a bit and lifts the barrier. She tells them all that she will allow them to try. Once Horus's sarcophagus opens, the seal will break and it will only last for 30 minutes. Lee Jongyang will only have these 30 minutes to heal him because once the seal is released, there is no way to reseal it. If you fail to save my son, no one will leave this place alive, she threatens the group, unleashing intense bloodlust. Nevertheless, Lee Jongyang has no plans of dying here and he calls forth the miracle Dr. Manhua. Both of their eyes are filled with confidence as they face the biggest challenge of this trip. On the other hand, Set is seen thinking about the whole situation. As per him, Lee Jongyang should have started healing Horus by now and this should be the best time for his plan. Moreover, he also knows Isis must be there as well. As it turns out, Isis was Set's first love. There, he curses himself, claiming he still has a long way to go. You see, the only reason he hesitated over his rebellion was Isis, and he himself cannot believe this. And that, boys, is what you call a simp. Can't blame him, though. Nevertheless, the time has finally come. Today, we will carry out our rebellion, he announces to his men, who are more ready than ever. Their eyes glow red as they chant to hype themselves up. All the while, Set proclaims, today, I will sit on the throne of the Nile. With this, he calls out his subordinate Anubis, a muscular man wearing a dog helmet, and orders him to gather the troops and lead them towards Horus. In response, Anubis asks what Set is planning on doing in the meanwhile, and he claims he will go directly towards the pharaoh and slit his throat. As per him, Osiris must be trembling in his boots at the moment, and it's only time the ill-fated relationship he has with his brother finally ends. Meanwhile, Anubis is ready to go and carry out his lord's command, proposing that today, I will harvest death. Not gonna lie, this guy looks pretty badass. I'm going to start rooting for him. Back at the heart of the Nile, Lee Jongyang and Manhua are doing the best they can. Lee Jongyang tells Manhua to try and control Horus's strength as much as possible, and in response, Manhua begins his acupuncture, sticking needles throughout Horus's entire body. All the while, they hear the sounds of the fearsome battle taking place outside the room. Inev seems to be especially concerned for Numek and Bastet. As such, Lee Jongyang calls Balder, who questions if the underdog will really be able to save Horus. To this, he replies that he might be able to, and Balder immediately heads out to help out with the fight. Lee Jongyang even decides to send out In-chang, Fenrir, and Hyunmoo as backup, and the others heed his command as well, preparing themselves for the approaching fight. On the other hand, Manhua is soon done with the preparation and calls for Lee Jongyang. With this, it is time for Lee Jongyang to shine. He decides to leave the rest to Balder. Moreover, since he will be practically defenseless when healing Horus, he places his trust in his team to protect him. In addition to all this, they now also have an ace card up their sleeve, an ally comparable to Set, Lady Isis herself. Because of this, he thinks it might be possible to avoid a full-fledged war, and instead, they could end up having others on their side. That's a weak mindset. What happened to having a good old, all-out war? Regardless, the first order of business is to save Horus. Out of nowhere, Lee Jongyung summons his spear and violently stabs it inside Horus's body. Of course, the mother of the stab doesn't take too kindly to this, and instantly goes into a fit of rage, dashing in to kill Lee Jongyung. Nevertheless, Inib decides to get in her way, telling her to calm down. However, Isis is not in the mood to chat. She has just witnessed her son get stabbed, but Manhua chooses to chime in as well, telling her to calm down and see what's happening. Big words for a mere doctor. As such, she looks over and finds the reddish glow of the lunacy to be diminishing. This is all because the spear absorbs this demonic energy, leaving Isis flabbergasted. As it is explained, the dragon bloodstone inside Lee Jongyung's spear absorbs the lunacy. However, it then sends it directly into his blood, causing him to bear the intense burden of this immense demonic power. There, he comments on how this is exactly what happened in England during the Battle of the Great Warriors. Back then, because of the dragon bloodstone, he was driven into madness and ran wild. But now, things are different. He is no longer the same as he was back then. This time, he decides to send this lunatic into the weak dragon heart inside of the dragon bloodstone. All the while, In Chong is worried about the whole situation. Is this going to be okay? She wonders. Probably, he is the main character after all. As per her, Horus's bandages, which were colored red with the lunacy, are reverting back to their original color, but Lee Jongyung, on the other hand, looks to be storing all this power in his body and doesn't seem to be doing so good. As he absorbs this energy into his body, Lee Jongyung reveals that it's not enough to just treat Horus. In his mind, in order for him to defeat Set, he needs to reach another stage, and thus, he comes up with an ingenious idea. By reversing the glow of the dragon bloodstone, he can devour the lunacy and also grow his dragon heart at the same time. Suddenly, the demonic energy's toll begins to weigh on him, and he feels an immense burden throughout his body. Manhua comments on how Lee Jongyung is completely absorbing all the energy but looks to be concerned for his friend's safety. Meanwhile, Isis couldn't be happier. As per her, the red magic power that ate away at her son is now entering Lee Jongyung, meaning her beloved son will finally wake up. Now that's what you call motherly love. Personally, she couldn't care less for Lee Jongyung or his well-being, and all she wants is for her son to be saved. All of a sudden, they hear a loud sound and Numik comes crashing into the room through the wall, sustaining major injuries. Seeing her in such a state, Iniv panics and heads over to her side immediately and feeds her a health potion. Thanks to this, she's able to regain her senses and claims she is fine. However, she looks to be more worried about Bastet. Suddenly, Set's troops, with Anubis leading them, barge in. There, Anubis is seen to be choking the life out of Bastet. Isis witnesses this and calls out to him, prompting him to punch Bastet in the stomach and chuck her to the ground. With this, Anubis orders his men to go and harvest death, and they all head in for the battle. Meanwhile, Isis orders the others on her side to protect Horus and the underdog and leads the charge. Even Manhua decides to jump in and treat Bastet. On the other hand, other hunters from the Nile are currently in the middle of fighting against Set, who isn't even fazed by these weaklings. With almost no effort, he brings down these hunters, and his sponsor, the Wolf of the Ruined Desert, supports Set's determination. What a shame, he proclaims. To him, it is pathetic that these warriors cannot even recognize their new ruler, even when he is standing right in front of them. God complex much? Nevertheless, he is excited to face his brother Osiris, telling him to wait since he, the one most suited for the throne, is coming to end him and resume his mission. On the other hand, at Asgard's headquarters, Odin gathers all the available members and informs them that Set has started a rebellion. However, that is not their main concern. Despite it looking like the Nile is on its last legs, Odin assures that everything will end up fine. Nonetheless, their topic of discussion is related to the Nile. All of a sudden, Baldur decides to chime in, using a video call feature Asgard must have. He tells Odin that he will be fighting Set soon, and Odin gives him permission to do so. The benefits of technology, all they need now is Twitter. Back at the Nile, Set eventually reaches Baldur, commenting on how he never expected Baldur to be the one to stand in his way. However, Neither did Balder. He too is surprised that they will clash swords here. But to Set, Balder's presence here means that this is what Asgard wields. Anyways, it doesn't change things for him in the least, and all he has to do before eating his main meal is to get some exercise. Without any warning, he dashes in and slashes at his foe. However, Balder is no mere pushover and manages to defend. Seeing this, both fighters complement each other's power and toughness as they get ready for round 2. Back in the underground room, Set's troops launch an all-out attack on their foes, but Inchang is ready for it. She summons her sword and heads in for the clash. Moreover, she's able to separate her 2 attackers and decides to end things for one of the opponents, announcing, "You will be the first one to go." However, before she can unleash an attack, the other hunters attack her together, forcing Inchang to parry their attacks and save their ally. Even one Hua is pushed back, and he reveals that each and every one of their foes is a hero-class hunter. He cannot fathom the techniques that have been passed down to them. But Inchang claims this isn't the time to be admiring your enemies. Yeah, you should be focused on beating the life out of them. On the other hand, Isis is taking on 4 hunters at once, but seems to be having some trouble keeping them all at bay at the same time. All of a sudden, Anubis decides to join in on the battle. Stand aside. He orders his troops as he dashes in towards Isis. Nevertheless, this wasn't Anubis' real plan. Instead of attacking Isis, he directs his attention toward the barrier she had erected around Horus. Laughing maniacally, he questions if Isis really thought she could maintain her barrier while fighting him. This leaves Isis in a world of trouble. Her barrier breaks open, prompting the hunters to go in and kill Horus once and for all. Alas, little do they know, this is the worst possible thing they can do. Yes, they might be able to get past the barrier now. However, the place they are running to is pure hell. There, Fenrir stands in the way of these Nile hunters and suddenly transforms into his wolf form, launching a barrage of strikes. Consequently, the hunters' numbers begin to dwindle. Thinking this might be their chance, Enev, Numic, and Bastet decide to rush in and get rid of all the opponents at once. Meanwhile, Set and Balder are still going at it, and their battle seems to be pretty close. There, Set realizes that Balder is still hiding his true strength and compliments him. In response, Balder too compliments Set's strength. Eventually, Set has had enough of this. Stating that it's nothing but a waste of his time, he decides to use a special technique he was apparently saving for his brother. With this, he unleashes his power cap, and his eyes begin to glow red. It can't be helped, he proclaims as he powers up to bring an end to their fight. Seeing this, Balder is on the edge of his seat. He knows things are about to get dangerous. His goal was to buy time for Li Zhongyang. But as things have turned out, if he makes a mistake, he will have to forfeit his life. Nevertheless, Odin's command was to fight Set, and Asgard's orders are absolute. As a result, he decides to power up as well, and the battle reaches its final stage. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Set dashes at his opponent at full speed, leaving Balder amazed. Nevertheless, he too has an ace up his sleeve. He announces that Set has one glaring weakness. He has no territorial rule. Therefore, he decides to take the battle elsewhere, somewhere where he will have an advantage. Using his skill, Bright Ablik, he manages to teleport himself, as well as Set, into his personal domain. Back in the underground room, Anubis immediately notices that Set's energy has suddenly disappeared, and so does Isis. Seeing this, she begins getting hyped up, claiming that now that the balance of power has been broken, it's better for Anubis to give in. But he refuses to surrender at this point. In his mind, he is sure that nothing could have happened to Set. Damn, how can he trust a maniac like Set so much? In addition, he notices that Isis is excited about the battle and thinks right now he may be able to use a special skill he has saved up. And so, using this as his opportunity, Anubis begins preparing for his skill. However, in order to complete it, he has to distract Isis for a while and loudly announces that his intention is not to kill her. But during the time Isis processes this statement, he unleashes the skill Curtain of Truth, creating a purple box around her. Seeing this, Inchang is left perplexed, but is already too late. The box engulfs Isis completely and Anubis begins chuckling out loud, claiming she let her guard down. Inside the box, a heavy toll is placed on Isis. Her body feels incredibly heavy, so much so that she is unable to move, rendering her unable to do anything. Outside, Anubis, with a sinister grin on his face, tells Isis to stay trapped in there and become my strength. Witnessing all this unfold, Enev heads in with Bastet and Numic in order to break apart Anubis' barrier. There, Inib decides to strike the barrier with all his might, thinking this would be more than enough to break through. Alas, even his strongest blow has no effect. He comments on how it feels as if he is pushing a sponge, proclaiming, "My attack won't go through." But that isn't really a cause of concern. If at first you don't succeed, try. Try again, as they say. Similarly, since one hit isn't enough, Inib unleashes a barrage of punches. However, the outcome leaves him stunned. Rather than breaking or showing chinks, the barrier grows even larger. In addition, from the barrier, an ominous purple aura emerges and goes into Anubis' body. Suddenly, Bastet realizes what is going on. She can sense Lady Isis's and Ineb's power radiating from Anubis. On the other hand, Anubis begins laughing maniacally once again. He announces that he can feel the incredible amount of power coursing through his entire body. Nevertheless, not all hope is lost. Inchon chimes in, calling out Anubis. She reveals that all of his troops have already met their end thanks to Fenrir and asks what he is planning on doing now that he is alone. But Anubis remains unfazed even in such a situation. Indifferent, he slowly raises his hand. "Death and souls, I harvest you all," he shouts, prompting a purple aura to emerge from the corpses of his fallen warriors. Suddenly, these dead men rise from their graves, leaving Inchon completely perplexed. I feel like we have seen this sort of development before already. She wonders how on earth all these warriors have regained life, but Anubis isn't going to give them the time to figure it out. Immediately, he orders his new zombies to destroy all of my enemies. Seeing this, Bastet tells her crew to be careful, explaining that Anubis' forbidden magic has the ability to turn the dead into his playthings. Hearing this, both Inchon and Manhua are extremely upset. Inchon is angry that she has to witness such a thing yet again. She remarks on how it is just like how it was in China with the giant Nars. The king of giants modified the fallen fighters for the sake of his slaughter, making monsters created from the fear of their ruler. Set and Anubis are both the same as that king of giants, she announces, and this is something she cannot forgive. "Yeah, you go girl." As a result, she powers up, telling everyone not to be too concerned since she has fought such a foe before. On the other hand, Baldur is left shell-shocked after his territorial skill. Bread Ablik is shattered by Set, something which, to him, makes absolutely no sense. As it is explained, territorial rule is an ability that allows its owner to have absolute power in given space. Is that a Jujutsu Kaisen reference? But even though Baldur's territorial rule is still active, Set has somehow managed to break free of it, destroying the ability that locked him down and breaking free of the space where he has the disadvantage. Regardless, Set is still more than willing to continue. As the lunacy takes control of him, he begins breathing heavily, ready to jump in for the attack at a moment's notice. However, all of this just makes Baldur feel one certain way, afraid. His hands begin to shiver after witnessing such an indescribable act, but he still has an ace up his sleeve. Since my territorial rule didn't work, is this now the only means left? He wonders. Nevertheless, there is not much time for thinking, and instead, he asks Odin for his permission to use that. However, much to his surprise, instead of giving the ghost signal, Odin orders him to stand down. As per him, if Baldur deploys that technique, it would result in their loss, and it would be better for Asgard to simply give up on the Nile. Never imagine Odin to be a scaredy cat, but okay. Consequently, he orders Baldur to get underdog and withdraw immediately. And so, Baldur is left with no choice other than to accept his orders. He sends back his weapons, and seeing this, Set suppresses his lunacy as well, questioning if this is Asgard's decision to send Baldur back. In response, Baldur exclaims that it cannot be helped. Although it's a bit humiliating, orders are orders at the end of things, and he cannot disobey. But Set claims that there is no need to be humiliated. In his mind, Asgard has made the right decision, and there is no way Baldur could have gotten the upper hand in this fight. With this, just as suddenly as he appeared, Baldur flees the situation, allowing Set to advance. As a result, Set continues with his plan and walks into Osiris' chambers. There, he finds Osiris waiting for him. However, Set comments on how his older brother isn't looking too good. Based on his appearance, Set comes to the conclusion that this must have been Osiris' decision. Angrily, he questions why things had to end up like this. But Osiris simply announces that he has no regrets and he doesn't believe his decision to be wrong. Hearing this, Set asks if this is all because of him. Is the reason why his older brother is obsessed with the power that cost Horus his life because he is determined to take the throne for himself. But that is not the case. Don't be so conceited. Osiris tells his younger brother, revealing that there are many powerful people hidden in this world, though not all of their goals are for the sake of humanity and its prosperity. Yes, Set, don't be too cocky. However, these characteristics seem a bit too familiar to Set. Surprised, he asks his brother if he has seen him as well, the man who wears all black. Hearing these words, Osiris loses his mind, making a godforsaken expression. This makes Set laugh out loud as he finally understands the entire story. Osiris must have felt completely defeated after meeting that man, and in order to defeat him, he became obsessed with a power he could never obtain. Even though his son was devoured by the power of its red ore, Osiris was still obsessed with it and refused to give up. Thankfully, he was stronger than his son and didn't lose his life because of it. Nevertheless, instead, his vitality and youth were taken away in exchange for the ore. Alas, Set is different from Horus and from Osiris as well. I'll show you, he boldly proclaims as he charges up his lunacy power. Seeing this, Osiris is left speechless. With his jaw on the floor, he senses the power of the red ore from his brother. On the other hand, Set just mocks Osiris, claiming he now has the power his brother desired and lusted after. Ultimately, Osiris has chosen the wrong side. Suddenly, Set summons a black dog which attacks Osiris, snatching away his life in an instant. All the while, Set is steadfast in his ambition and makes his goals clear. I will follow that man and rule this entire world, not just this pathetically small Nile and Egypt. On the other hand, Inchang is busy cutting down these zombies, bringing them down one after the other in the blink of an eye. But she isn't alone. Gungs and Hiyumu also help her, and together, they instantaneously dwindle the enemy numbers. However, even that is not enough. Once the corpses lay lifelessly on the ground, as they should already be doing since they are dead, a purple aura emerges from them, causing them all to get back on their feet, despite all their injuries. On the flip side, the living hunters are already exhausted. Seeing all this, Manhua comments on how they just keep getting up, and Inchang, sweating profusely, already had some idea this was going to happen. Luckily, she knows the only way to stop them. All of a sudden, they hear a loud noise from behind them, causing her to take a look back and see what is going on. Consequently, she finds Anubis in the middle of a heated battle with Fenrir. The both of them clash and collide, causing havoc and destroying the surroundings. But despite the intense pressure from his foe, Anubis is able to create some distance. Using this as his chance, he launches a blast towards Fenrir, kicking up a dust storm. Witnessing this, Inchang is left distressed from her comrade, and as the dust settles, Fenrir is revealed to have been defeated. Anubis' attack caused him to revert back to his human form, and he now lies on the cold ground. With this, Anubis begins basking in the glory of his victory. He remarks how he can feel this ever-ending power within him. I feel as if I can defeat anyone. Even Osiris himself, he proclaims, too bad Osiris is already gone. Regardless, it is now time to finish things once and for all. As he heads to seal the deal, out of nowhere, Li Zhongyang suddenly rises from the sarcophagus, announcing it's done, and he isn't alone. Horus, covered in bandages, rises along with him, leaving Anubis in a world of trouble. Horus, enraged, questions how Anubis dare do such a thing. With the use of the bandages, he grabs the curtain of truth and smashes it into a million pieces. Of course, Anubis begins cursing up a storm after seeing this. The barrier, which even Isis and Iniv weren't able to break apart, was destroyed so easily. Crimea River. As the dust settles, Isis comes walking out, delighted that her son is awake. She never thought she would see him again, and this causes her to shed tears. Nonetheless, Horus just tells her to rest for now and leave everything else to him. And so, he heads down to deal with Anubis. All the while, things turn from bad to worse for Anubis. As soon as the curtain of truth was destroyed, he was rendered helpless. His zombie warriors slowly began to disintegrate and ultimately turn to ash. Iniv explains that since the barrier was broken, Anubis can no longer control the dead. But is this really going to stop someone who betrayed his entire organization? Apparently not. Filled with rage, Anubis moves in to confront Horus. However, that will be his last mistake. Without even breaking a sweat, Horus controls his bandages and constrains Anubis' movements. In addition, he then unleashes one of his techniques, exploding Anubis and sending him crashing to the floor. But, to his surprise, Anubis manages to stay alive and kicking. Although his mask seems to be blown to shreds, he is still breathing. How am I still alive? He questions. In turn, Horus claims that it isn't his decision to take his life. Consequently, he then turns back and heads toward Li Zhongyang. asking if this is enough for what he has done, and Li Zhongyang tells him yes. But this leaves Hyunmoo baffled, and he asks why his master decides to spare this scum. And the reason for this is because, as per Li Zhongyang, Hyunmoo looks lonely. He plans on making a brother for Hyunmoo. Or, in other words, he is going to make Anubis his slave. Hearing this, Hyunmoo is extremely happy and thanks his master for his thoughtfulness. On the other hand, Anubis is left with a chill going down his spine. All of a sudden, the entire headquarters begins to violently shake, as if an earthquake has hit Egypt. Sensing this, everyone is left shocked. There, Horus reveals the reason for this earthquake. "Father has passed away," he announces. And the hunters underground aren't the only people to sense the passing of Osiris. Other hunters of the Nile also fall to the ground in despair. As tears flow down their faces, they mourn their late ruler and accept their defeat. However, there is still some hope. Not yet. When the hunters announces, he reveals that Horus has awakened from his slumber, and it is not too late yet. As hunters of the Nile, they must lend their strength to Horus, and all of them head in to support their leader's son. On the other hand, leaders of the Nile branches are having a heated discussion. The Memphis leader, Thoth, claims that his branch will not join in on the battle. Moreover, he asks what Hermopolis is planning on doing in the first place. To this, the Hermopolis leader, Sekhmet, proclaims that they will band together and defeat Set, claiming they are not cowards. In Sekhmet's eyes, there is no way he is just going to idly sit by and watch his beloved Nile get destroyed. As such, after Memphis' refusal, he heads back alone to prepare for the upcoming fight. All of a sudden, Thoth stops him. He explains that he too wants to go to the Temple of Ra with the Hermopolis members. But this isn't to pick sides, neither Horus nor Set's, but rather to witness the new king of the Nile be born. Hearing this, Sekhmet realizes what fox-like personality Thoth possesses, commenting on how he must be planning on siding with whoever becomes the victor. I guess guys like that are everywhere though. And so, they both head to the Temple of Ra, and they aren't alone. As it turns out, everyone in the Nile has gathered here, including Set and Horus. Seeing Horus in front of him, Set makes remarks on how he looks like a mess. In turn, Horus comments on how Set seems to be having fun with this massacre. But Set isn't in the mood for chatting around. He gets straight to the point, telling Horus that the reason he has come here is to decide the new king of the Nile. For the glory of Ra, he wants to decide the one chosen and see who shall rule over the Nile. Even the spectators begin chanting, and their screams can be heard from miles away. Hearing all this, Set becomes more and more excited. He begins laughing out loud, happy that all of these people have gathered here to see the birth of the new king. Dude, you shouldn't count your chickens before they hatch. Sounds like a death flag to me. But first, he compliments Li Zhongyang. "Underdog, you are amazing," he tells him. In Set's opinion, he could have never imagined that the underdog would have been able to awaken Horus. However, everything proceeded just as that man predicted. Hearing this, Li Zhongyang is left perplexed. As per him, even though he wasn't sure that he would be able to treat Horus, the man behind Set was able to predict all of it. How could this be? Maybe that guy is a psychic or something. More importantly, does this mean that Set intended for him to save Horus? He asks this question to Set, who reveals this to be the truth. After all, a true king has to be recognized by everyone. But that's not all. Set has yet another suggestion. He announces that on this stage where the future king will be decided, Li Zhongyang should come up and take part in the battle as well. This leaves everyone stunned, and they wonder how he could say such a thing. An outsider joining the fight to decide the new king. Such a thing is unheard of. But, as per Set, Horus must have felt it as well. Horus' sponsor, the son of the desert, has been watching Li Zhongyang all this time. Of course, Li Zhongyang is already aware of this. Ever since Horus woke up, the son of the desert has been watching over him. But, for some reason, his sponsor, the Sky of Apocalypse, doesn't hate it, despite it being overly possessive. This makes him think that maybe this is all connected to who will become the king of the Nile. In addition, Horus has just been healed. The lunacy that was ravaging his body had just recently been lifted, and he had only just broken free from his seal. What's more, Horus was never in a position to defeat the fearsome Set, much less in his current condition. As such, he decides to join in on the battle. He jumps onto the stage, proclaiming, "I will help you." In response, Set begins to power up. He unleashes his madness and claims it's finally time to decide who has the better sponsor that suits Ra. Seeing this, Horus and Li Zhongyang also summon their weapons and prepare for the battle. Things are finally getting interesting. All the while, Odin is in the Asgard headquarters all alone. There he is seen sitting on his chair, pondering over the events that have unfolded. As per him, the Nile would have been the perfect organization for him to devour. However, the power Set has gotten his hands on. The dark red magic power of lunacy that disrupted even a territorial rule is something that cannot be taken lightly. Suddenly, he begins clenching his fist, revealing that what he felt from Set at that moment was fear, a feeling he thought he had long forgotten. But that's not all. Including fear, he also felt an immense wave of pressure. I found a possibility. With the unknown power Set has, it might be possible to even kill a sponsor, he thinks. Because of this, he still hasn't given up completely. Yes, he is done with the Nile, but Set is a completely different thing. Once the rebellion is over, he plans to step in. Of course, easier said than done, but all of a sudden, he senses someone's presence. This alone is enough to send shivers down Odin's spine. According to him, it should not be possible for someone to enter this territory without his permission. But here he is, standing in front of an uninvited guest. Consequently, he questions who this coded figure is and how he entered his domain. But the figure doesn't give him an answer. Instead, he claims, "I will give you power." This guy looks oddly familiar. Lee Jong-yeon, that you. On the other hand, back in the Temple of Ra, the fierce battle for the throne gets underway. Horus, using his bandages, tries to attack Set and deal damage, but his opponent isn't backing out. Instead, Set simply parries all the incoming strikes away and manages to get a bit close. As such, Horus deploys a new strategy. All of a sudden, his bandages begin to render Set unable to parry them with his bare hands. Seeing this, Set announces that his nephew has gotten stronger. Unfortunately, he hasn't had the time to get used to this new strength, and he cannot handle it. Consequently, Set unleashes one of his techniques, Sandstorm, creating a bunch of tornadoes of wind and fire. Thanks to this, he is not only able to deflect the incoming blows, but also delivers a counterattack, sending Horus flying backward. But the shove doesn't stop there. Without wasting a second, Set moves in for the kill. Using this as his chance, he leaps into the air and punches Horus in the solar plexus, sending him tumbling to the ground. Even the temple floor cannot resist such immense pressure and begins to crumble. Suddenly, Set senses yet another attack coming his way. This time it's Lee Jong-yeon with his fiery spear, who wants to stab Set and get things over with. Unfortunately, Set is not a mere pushover. Easily catching the spear, he compliments Lee Jong-yeon's ingenuity, remarking on how he too has become much stronger than before. On the flip side, Lee Jong-yeon is left utterly distressed. In his mind, it makes no sense that Set was able to subdue his attack so easily, an attack that has defeated many before him. However, if that is the case, there is only one choice left for our hero, using the power of the lunacy that he has just absorbed. As such, he unleashes this demonic power, and his strength begins to immediately increase. As his eyes glow red, Set notices that his foe is using lunacy as well and questions how Lee Jong-yeon can use and utilize the power of the red ore. This leads him to only one conclusion. Lee Jong-yeon must have absorbed this power when treating Horus. Seeing this, Set decides to go on the offensive. Thinking about how interesting this all is, he begins sending blows back toward Lee Jong-yeon, who is left only able to block. As they fight, Lee Jong-yeon questions if Set will tell him about the real identity of the man behind him. But, as per Set, there is no point in doing so. In his mind, Lee Jong-yeon is going to meet his end today either way, and telling him would only be a waste of everyone's time. And so, he launches a strong punch, sending Lee Jong-yeon crashing to the ground as well. However, before he can continue the massacre, Horus's flaming bandages sneak up from behind out of nowhere. Because of this, Set is captured and constrained in this ball of fire, and from below, Horus questions his uncle really has to kill his father. Of course, an attack of this level is like child's play to Set, and he easily escapes the bandage's clutches, remarking that this attack was not bad. Consequently, he lands back on the ground, and his opponent regroups as well. There, Lee Jong-yeon has a proposition for their opponent, asking if Set will answer their question if they defeat him. But that will never happen. Or that is at least what Set thinks. Obviously, Lee Jong-yeon has no intentions of backing down as well, and both sides once again prepare for the clash. But as it seems, Lee Jong-yeon has a trick up his sleeve. He reveals that thanks to the power of the red ore and the lunacy, he is currently overflowing with mana. Right now, I'll be able to use it, he thinks. As such, he unleashes two of his most fearsome techniques, Sunflare and Maelstrom, unleashing a strong blast towards Set. The The force behind this attack is so intense that the temple ground is left shattered and gives way. Even Set is amazed at the pressure of this blow, commenting that he can see why Li Jianyang is so confident. Alas, even an attack of this caliber will not be enough to bring him down. Set simply deploys his sandstorm once again, and both techniques collide head-on, causing havoc. The aftermath of the collision leaves huge boulders flying in the air and falling onto the watching crowd. Seeing this, the Nile hunters try to run away but realize it's too late for that. Luckily, Inchang jumps in and defends the audience, telling them all to fall back while she covers them. As a result, the Nile hunters flee the scene, thanking Inchang and thinking about how this isn't a regular fight between hunters. Back on the stage, Horus questions if they have finally defeated their enemy, but sadly, that is not the case. Even though, as per Li Jianyang, his attack landed, it wasn't enough. Set's magical power hasn't decreased in the slightest. As the dust from the battle settles, Set's figure is seen standing, virtually unharmed. But then, all of a sudden, he begins to attack yet again. He deploys that Black Dog skill once again, the same attack he killed Osiris with, and his target is Horus, who falls prey to this sudden attack and sustains heavy damage. Obviously, Li Jianyang helps free his comrade from this dog's clutches. With this, Set begins to speak. He claims that Li Jianyang's techniques were far beyond what he could have imagined. Then, it is also revealed that these dogs aren't really dogs. Rather, they are Set's hands with shape-shifted tar transformed into the head of this fearsome beast. Never in a million years did Set think Li Jianyang and Horus would have been able to break through his sandstorm technique. But here we are. On the other hand, Li Jianyang is left perplexed and confused as to how Set can still have so much power. After not only fighting Balder, Set even defeated the king of the Nile, Osiris, the one said to be the strongest, but he still had this much power left. I can see why Balder lost, Li Jianyang thinks. Nevertheless, Set is quite taken aback that he was forced to use his power 3 times on the same day. All the while, there is only one thought going through Li Jianyang's mind. There is no way to win. And he isn't alone in that thought. The Hermopolis leader Sekhmet and Memphis leader Thoth both have the same thing running through their mind. They question what's going on with that ominously powerful mana Set possesses, commenting on how it surpasses the combined mana of both Li Jianyang and Horus. No, rather Set's mana is more than the combined mana of all the hunters present here at this moment. Realizing all this, even Inchang begins losing hope that her comrade can come out on top as the victor. But the show must go on. The fight is nowhere near its end. On the stage, Set prepares to make his next move, standing around ominously with immense power radiating from him. On the other hand, Horus is already nearing his limit. After the dog attack, he is left coughing up blood. Seeing this, she makes some snarky comments, telling Horus he looks exhausted. To him, this means that his spouse, the world of the ruined desert, is the more suitable companion for Nile's throne, and announces he will let his nephew finally rest in peace. But, as it turns out, his remarks aren't far from the truth. Even Li Jianyang is left panting after this prolonged battle. He finally understands why Balder chose to run away. To him, anyone who would lay their eyes on Set's dark red aura would feel as if they were fighting against an endless void of power that would never be depleted. It's a visually terrifying power that makes one want to flee immediately. However, that is the one thing they cannot do in this situation. Despite being tired and fatigued, Li Jianyang still remains determined to bring this evil leader down and prepare himself to continue the fight. This leaves Set baffled since he assumed Li Jianyang would tuck his tail between his legs and run, just like Balder did, thinking that Asgard decided to back down. Well, regardless, it doesn't make much of a difference. As per Set, even Odin would not be able to defeat that man. So without any more delay, he comes closer, saying, "I will go ahead and take your life." Meanwhile, although he knows this is an unwinnable battle, Li Jianyang refuses to give up, believing this is the duty of those with power. All of a sudden, a bright beam of light shines down from the skies, and a message pops up. "Son of the Desert watches over you." Seeing this, all of the Nile hunters are left speechless, including Isis, who reveals that this is Ra's light. But things don't end there. The Son of the Desert begins to shine on Li Jianyang, along with Horus, and Li Jianyang notices that his wounds have healed. Moreover, he feels an immense rush of mana throughout his whole body, and so does Horus. Is this sponsored by multiple sponsors? Ask the attendees. He is surprised by the fact that his personal sponsor, the Sky of Apocalypse, is not against this idea, leading him to think maybe these two sponsors are of the same rank. Nevertheless, he is only a temporary buff and will be withdrawn in a short amount of time. All the while, the Nile hunters are still left in awe that Ra's light is falling onto two people at the same time. Even Set is taken aback and claims this to be Ra's last struggle. Nonetheless, Horus, feeling the power coursing through his body, heads into attack. Of course, he isn't going to just stand around idly, and he too begins attacking. As they both clashed with each other, Li Jianyang received yet another blessing. Thanks to the new sponsor, whose weak dragon heart he was harvesting temporarily grows. And this, in turn, gives Li Jianyang black wings resembling those of a fallen angel. Using them, he soars up into the air where he notices that he can now see the flow of mana in the air. And so, epiphany strikes. I get it. Through the mana stream, he realizes, I can use this mana in the air. In addition, if he is able to do so, he could probably also use the Demon King's signature attack, the winning move he needs to come out on top. As such, he activates a stream and the weak dragon heart begins absorbing the magical power in the air, ultimately activating Garuda. Despite his newly acquired power, Li Jianyang still fails to stand next to Set. Hence, this airman is his last resort. He begins focusing on gathering every little bit of this surrounding mana, and suddenly, flames begin engulfing him. All the while, with the vast desert and the sky of apocalypse look down on him with delight. At last, Li Jianyang unleashed the ace of his sleeve, Fire King. This leads to a barrage of messages, enabling Li Jianyang to unlock this new skill. And he grows without the help of a sponsor. All of his stats improve vastly as he prepares to end things once and for all. Sensing this power, the crowd looks up the sky, finding that there are two suns in the sky. Back on the stage, Set is still clashing head-on with Horus, commenting on how his sponsor is obviously better suited for the throne since the sun god of the desert is so weak. And this appears to be the truth since Horus is getting pushed back. But, out of nowhere, a mysterious voice warns Li Jianyang, telling him to get out of the way. Upon hearing this, Horus created some distance, and before you know it, Li Jianyang's Fire King is already deployed and moving swiftly towards Set. Even though he's able to sense it coming, Steve is unable to dodge, and his only choice is to block this enormous attack. The skilled leader led to the entire arena being captivated, and the audience rushed for their lives. Regardless, Steve is still fighting for his life to stop this skill. On the other hand, Li Jianyang awakened from his lunacy, glad that he was able to break free before he lost control of his body. Set, this is your end, he announces, but that doesn't appear to be the case. Suddenly, the son of the desert expresses his anger as yet another prisoner, the Dark Sun, shows up on the battlefield. This sponsor wields a black aura that is able to absorb the Fire King's blast, and even Li Jianyang, who has used up all his strength, cannot escape in time. As a result, he ends up getting sucked into this black abyss. Now trapped inside this pitch blackness, Li Jianyang floats around aimlessly. He notices that in this place, nothing exists. There is no sky, sun, heat, or people. An abyss with nothing inside. All of a sudden, he begins to fall and wonders if this is how he will die. All his ambitions to change the world for the better are now over. But then he hears a voice. Get a hold of yourself. This voice tells him. Out of nowhere, Baldur appears inside this abyss and snatches Li Jianyang away. Not only that, he manages to drag him out of this darkness, and the two of them return to the real world once again. However, they aren't out of danger yet. Baldur tells him to use the Bifrost, claiming that an explosion is going to occur. Hearing this, Li Jianyang comes back to his senses. Seeing the abyss of darkness expanding, he figures that Baldur is speaking the truth, and as a result, he uses Bifrost. But unlike what Baldur expected, Li Jianyang uses it for something else. Just when the explosion is about to happen, he summons Bifrost to cast a barrier over the Temple of Ra. Seeing this, Baldur gets enraged. Grabbing Li Jianyang by the throat, he questions why he did that. They needed to use Bifrost to escape from this situation, but here he just wasted their only escape plan. Are you trying to die with them? He questions. But this was the right thing to do. Li Jianyang claims that if he didn't do what he did, everyone else in here would die, and thus it couldn't be helped. Regardless, they are now stuck in this place with an impending explosion waiting to happen. As a result, Baldur uses his territorial rule, Bread Ablik, to flee the scene before they get blown up into smithereens. Outside the barrier, Li Jianyang's team is watching all this unfold, worried about their leader. One who realizes that he created a barrier to protect everyone else, but even he will not be able to survive an explosion of such scale. Therefore, fearing the worst, he jumps in to save his teammate, However, out of nowhere, In-chang grabs his hand, stopping him. To this, Manhua questions why she would do such a thing, as he thinks Li Jiangyang must still be in there, and they have to save him. But, as per In-chang, there is no need to do that, she claims, saying Manhua just has to get used to this because it won't take long for Li Jiangyang to come out of this explosion as if nothing has happened. Hearing these words, Manhua realizes that the rest of the team seems to be rather calm. He notices that everyone, aside from him, who joined the last, is just waiting for Li Jiangyang's arrival. And that is because that is just the type of person he is. Moreover, the fact that the barrier is still intact means that Li Jiangyang is still alive, meaning there is hope. With this, Manhua decides to just wait and watch the outcome. On the other hand, the Nile hunters don't have the same luxury or trust in Li Jiangyang. Horus watches on reluctantly, concerned for his benefactor, as do the others. Their thought recalls how the light of Ra fell on Li Jiangyang as well, making him yet another candidate to be king. Back on the stage, it is explained that when the dark sun briefly appeared, it emitted explosive energy. As it exploded, it clashed with Bifrost's barrier and moved into Baldur's territorial rule. Although he and Li Jiangyang survived the explosion due to this, the poor Baldur's domain, which used to be extremely beautiful, has now turned into ruins. Seeing this, he begins cursing out loud, whereas Li Jiangyang is just glad that the blast was blocked. In his mind, he is happy about the fact this happened. Baldur did this on his own, and this has turned into a unique opportunity for him to weaken his foes. However, Baldur isn't very amused by this all. I mean, how to be as well. Even though he was forced to save the underdog on Odin's orders, he still blames him for destroying his beautiful domain. "I'll make sure to pay you back," he announces. Nevertheless, with this, they return to the real world and find it in tatters. Seeing the crater left behind, he wonders if this really happened because of him and the dark sun, commenting on how it looks like a meteor crash here. There, Baldur suggests they search for Set. Of course, no one could have survived such an explosion, but it's better to be safe. As a result, he turns on his mana stream, thinking it might help him discover Set. However, he isn't able to find any trace of him. Nonetheless, he does find a piece of cloth on the ground. Thinking it might be special since it was able to withstand the explosion, Li Jiangyang quietly puts it in his inventory. Soon, Baldur rejoins him empty-handed, and Li Jiangyang decides to keep his findings a secret. Consequently, he then lowers the Bifrost barrier, and as he does so, the people watching are left stunned as he and Baldur walk, unscathed. Seeing this, Manhua claims is just like what In-chang just said. He just didn't have enough faith in Li Jiangyang, and not acting all "I told you so," although tears are running down her face, making Manhua realize she was the one most worried this entire time. With this, she rushes over to Li Jiangyang's side and hugs him. "Geez, get a room, you guys." With this, the entire ordeal comes to an abrupt end. But is this really the case? Was everything truly alright after the disaster that took place in Egypt? Previously, the number of hunters was steadily growing, to the point where normal humans began worrying if they would soon be replaced by hunters. However, someone stepped in and halted this surge of hunters, Korea's underdog, Li Jiangyang. After the tough battle at a hotel somewhere in Cairo, Manhua asks Li Jiangyang if he is feeling alright. The battle must have taken a huge toll on his body, and in response, Li Jiangyang says he feels good enough, although he would like Manhua to check. And so, Manhua gets closer to him. In his mind, there is no way Li Jiangyang is okay. After all, he absorbed the lunacy straight from Horus' body and even got a sponsorship from the Son of the Desert. All this would leave anyone's body overexerted and in tatters. As a result, Manhua decides to check his pulse, but after a short while, is left perplexed and amazed at the outcome. Li Jiangyang is really in perfect condition, if not even healthier than before. I guess the main characters are just built differently after all. He comments on how this is quite extraordinary and unheard of. Hearing this, even Li Jiangyang feels relieved and remarks how glad he is to have Manhua to rely on at times like these. Suddenly, In-chang comes barging into the room. Also, why is she walking like a wump from Mario? Did her knees decide to quit? She reveals that there is some big news. Everyone in Egypt is talking about the underdog. She hands him a newspaper, and Li Jiangyang begins reading the top headlines. There, he comments on how just a few days ago, all the headlines were about the increasing population of hunters, but now there is not a single line about them. Instead, all the articles are just talking about him. However, is this really a cause for celebration? With a distressed look on his face, he wonders if someone is trying to distract attention from this situation. Nevertheless, the Sky of Apocalypse is just pleased that his sponsor has gained so much notoriety. Hearing his concern, Inchon claims that the regular people must have been startled by this incident, and Lee Jongyang agrees with this, especially since it must have been the first time regular people witnessed the strength of a hunter, especially one of the highest caliber. Way to toot your own horn. Regardless, this all still works out in their favor. The normal people will now have their guard up at all times in front of hunters. Meanwhile, in Lee Jongyang's mind, he recalls how all normal humans are destined to become akin to livestock and how hunters will one day rule over them all. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door and Inev comes inside. Is this guy made of stone or something? He's so chiseled. There, he explains that Horus has ordered him to fetch the underdog, and as a result, he accompanies Lee Jongyang to his leader. It is explained that after the battle with Set, Lee Jongyang and Horus were unable to meet each other. This is because Horus had just reawakened from his sealed state, and in the battle, he sustained countless injuries that needed to be treated right away. Consequently, Horus was receiving medical treatment for his wounds all this time. Anyway, the two of them head on their way, and Inev expresses how grateful the Nile is to Lee Jongyang for his help. Moreover, Inev also explains that since the light of Ra fell onto Lee Jongyang as well, this makes him a king candidate too. But Lee Jongyang announces that I have no interest in being king. He does not want to cause any unnecessary trouble and states that the light of Ra will soon leave him. However, there is no concrete evidence behind this. Lee Jongyang is still being sponsored by the Son of Desert, and even the Sky of Apocalypse is now starting to complain. But because of this, it makes Lee Jongyang think that it is impossible for the Son of Desert to sponsor two people at the same time, and hence, it will obviously choose Horus in the end. Hearing this, Inev is satisfied and thanks Lee Jongyang. And so, they both make their way to the Nile, where they are greeted by Horus. There, Horus apologizes for greeting Lee Jongyang so late and deems him the savior of the Nile. Because of this, he claims Egypt has decided to repay him and give him anything he desires. As a result, Lee Jongyang states, I want you all to change. Apparently, the Nile used to once respect the regular people and their rights, but the Egypt he has experienced is far from this. He has seen hunters infringe on the rights of the regular people, and hence, he wants the hunters in the Nile to once again respect the normal humans. As such, Horus reveals that this is something that took place when his father, Osiris, went overboard after he was sealed, promising to make sure everything returns back to the way they were. But this isn't enough of a request in Horus's mind. He announces they are willing to grant any request the underdog has because, in his eyes, you are the Nile's other king. These words leave Sekhmet, Thoth, and even Isis, who are all present there, perplexed. Isis even scolds her son for uttering such insolence, but this fact cannot be disputed. Despite being an outsider, the light of Ra fell upon Lee Jongyang, and everyone knows it. There is no one who can deny this, but Lee Jongyang is not pleased with this outcome. Why though? It sounds fun. Of course, Lee Jongyang tries to argue against this, claiming the light within him is soon going to disappear. But despite knowing this, Horus announces this will not change the fact he was blessed by it. Even if the light leaves Lee Jongyang's body, there will still be a small piece left behind. And that is how he and the underdog will be connected. As a result, he loudly proclaims that he wants Lee Jongyang to take the title of Ammon, and together with him, he wants to lead the Nile into a new system. Moreover, just like Lee Jongyang has asked, he wants the Nile to change and no longer discriminate between hunters and normal people, saying they will immediately abolish the law that allows hunters to freely kill regular people as they please, and the others are left with no choice other than to heed the command of their leader. Later that day, Horus and Lee Jongyang gaze at the city from atop a tower. There, Lee Jongyang thinks about how all the so-called kings he has encountered so far have always had a screw loose, like the giant king that even Set. And Horus shares the same concern. Taking off his bandages, Horus reveals that he is thinking about abolishing the title of king from the Nile. His reasoning is that, in some cases, hunters can get infinite lifespans, and it is too dangerous to let such people get their hands on absolute power. No shit, Sherlock. Even Horus himself has the possibility of going astray. Hearing this, Lee Jongyang comments on how Horus is a good man who holds power. However, that might end up changing in the future. As such, Lee Jongyang claims this might be a good idea. All of a sudden, Horus reveals yet another piece of information: Set is still alive. In addition, he wants Lee Jongyang to find him. As of now, Horus is unable to leave Egypt due to his title and hopes Lee Jongyang will undertake this task instead, and the underdog is more than ready to do so. Both ways, he is curious about the person behind Set, and Lee Jongyang agrees to do so, claiming he will contact Horus if he finds Set. Not long after the incident is over, hunters from other parts of the world land in Egypt. The news reporters are all at the airport, awaiting the hunters' arrival in an attempt to get the next scoop of the day. However, as usual, the hunters aren't very talkative and just leave without answering a single question. Alas, the reporters are used to this kind of response and just let it be. But then, all of a sudden, they lay their eyes on the Korean Association. As it turns out, Seoul, the one said to be the Korean Association's next president, has arrived here as well. Damn, I missed that shining bald head. And that's not all. Egypt's hero Lee Jongyang has come to pick him up. Apparently, the two of them have met here today to discuss the support Korea is willing to offer Egypt in these hard times. Consequently, Lee Jongyang takes him to his car and both of them head out. Inside the car, they talk about recent events, and Lee Jongyang is visibly distressed about the news Seoul has brought. Lee Jongyang thought it was strange Balder left immediately for Korea, but now things make sense as Seoul reveals that Odin has mysteriously gone missing, and, as of right now, Asgard is in a state of emergency. In addition, since Odin's influence is so massive, it isn't easy for them to fill his position so easily. Hearing this, Lee Jongyang is left perplexed. He questions why this had to happen now, right when the cataclysm is nearing. If this happened after the cataclysm, he would have welcomed such a development with open arms. But as things stand right now, this is far from the best case. He wonders where on earth Odin could have gone off to. To this, Seoul reveals that Odin is not the type of person to have been attacked or kidnapped. Actually, that is exactly what happened. I saw it with my own two eyes. What's more, the last place Odin was seen was in his territorial rule, Asgard, and hence wherever he went. Odin did it on his own accord. Maybe Set gave him a visit. You know he can bust open these territorial rules. But this doesn't make Lee Jongyang feel any better, especially since it is so close to the cataclysm. Nevertheless, Seoul tells him not to worry so much. The fact is Odin has his own preparations for the cataclysm, and even though he's missing right now, it won't end up being a major problem. Hopefully. Regardless, they have lost a crucial source of power with Odin's disappearance, and Seoul suggests they finish things up here quickly and return back to the motherland as soon as possible. All the while, Lee Jongyang blames himself for Odin's disappearance in his mind. There is no way this isn't linked to him coming back into the past, and he thinks things might have played out differently if he wasn't here. Nonetheless, they eventually reach their destination, a place that looks to be a council room. There, Yashin, a member of Takamata, Japan's hunter organization, expresses his regret over this incident and promises to deploy a majority of their heroes towards the restoration of Egypt. Of course, Lee Jongyang is immediately aware they have alternatives, such as taking control of Egypt from the shadows. Not only that, there are many other groups from all across the world here as well, who claim this incident has tarnished the reputation of hunters all across the globe. Therefore, they demand some sort of compensation. Hearing this, Lee Jongyang realizes all of these groups are here for one reason and one reason only, to devour Egypt while they are weakened. Consequently, Lee Jongyang questions if Osiris is going to join in as well, but that is not the case. As per Seoul, Asgard has decided not to involve themselves with Nile's matters. What's more, they already have more than enough influence within the Nile thanks to a certain someone. On the other hand, on the stage, Horus addresses the crowd, revealing they have decided to come together with Asgard. More specifically, they aim to work with the underdog. Hearing this, all the hunters in the room immediately begin glancing over at the Korean hunter. Nevertheless, this leaves Seoul in a pickle. As of now, Korea is in trouble as it is with Odin's disappearance and all, and hence, they cannot even protect their country on their own. Therefore, he tries to make this known to everyone else, but Lee Jongyang intervenes. All of a sudden, he claims there is something that they need to discuss further before setting anything in stone and jumps into the middle of the room. There, he explains that he wants to talk about Set. However, everyone is left speechless after hearing these words. They never imagined Lee Jongyang would reveal information about a hunter as strong as him, thinking the underdog is a pretty righteous dude. He's such a sweetheart. Nonetheless, Lee Jongyang continues, explaining that Set warned him of something massive that is going to take place. He claims it is all related to the special gates that have been popping up. Even the other hunters have noticed that the concentration of magic in the air is thicker than ever, and as per Set, this is the sign of what is about to come, a cataclysm. Moreover, he claims Set wanted him to join hands with him, Hence, he told him this secret. Apparently, there is someone with incredible power working towards conquering the world, and if Li Zhongyang is to work with that person, he could join hands with them. Hearing this, some of the organizations are left flabbergasted, but not all are convinced. Yet again, Yashin from Takamagahara stands up. "What ridiculous nonsense," he proclaims. "As far as Yashin is concerned, this is all just some trick Li Zhongyang has conjured up to raise his worth. Furthermore, although the underdog is strong, he isn't strong enough for Set to want him." He even begins mocking Li Zhongyang, claiming he has been watching far too many movies if he is talking about things like world domination. But Li Zhongyang fights back. If that is the case, he asks what Yashin and his organization's ultimate goal is. Of course, Yashin claims is to save and protect humanity, but Li Zhongyang is aware that isn't the case, questioning his intentions. Individual benefit and the authority to rule over a territory. "Isn't that your real goal?" he asks, triggering Yashin. "Bro just exposed Japan." But Li Zhongyang then immediately backtracks, announcing that whatever Yashin's goal isn't important. Well, it kinda is. What is important is that the one behind Set is already working toward his goal of ruling over the entire world. Of course, the incident in Egypt is very significant, but considering the enemy's objective is to conquer the world, means none of the organizations are going to have it easy to keep their territory safe. Hearing this, all the hunters in the crowd lose their minds. Soon enough, the meeting comes to an end, and Seoul decides to give Li Zhongyang a piece of his mind. He questions what the underdog is thinking, already telling all the other countries of the approaching cataclysm. In his eyes, nobody knows what kind of development will come from this endeavor. The hunters in that meeting were all powerful people who had the capability of moving the world. They have the power to completely change everything, he announces. But isn't like Li Zhongyang isn't aware of this. In fact, this is the thing he is sure of. According to him, telling them all about the incoming cataclysm will help save the lives of many others. Hearing this, Seoul is confused, but he explains, stating now that the hunters are aware of the phenomenon that is about to come. They will try to plan and gain something from all this. That alone will help them defend their countries, and compared to the past, a lot of people will be able to survive. And that is what you call forward thinking. Finally, things begin making sense. Seoul realizes that, with Odin missing right now, Li Zhongyang has gathered new people to help deal with this situation. On the other hand, Li Zhongyang just prays that things work out as well as he hopes. Meanwhile, Yashin is in his hotel room, thinking about the cataclysm Li Zhongyang has warned them about. He originally came here to take over Egypt, but here he is, with the burden of an approaching cataclysm placed on his mind, though it could be all a lie as far as he is concerned. He recalls when Li Zhongyang told him all about this, stating it didn't look like he was lying. As a result, he asks his comrades' thoughts on all of this. From behind, a blindfolded woman in a red yukata is seen standing behind Yashin. As per him, this woman also predicted an upcoming disaster, and in response, all the woman can muster up is a disaster is coming. And that's all she's been saying for the past week. Consequently, Yashin decides to take this all a bit seriously and decides to go over and talk with the underdog. And so he heads over to Li Zhongyang's hotel, where he is greeted by all the other representatives of the worldwide organizations. Seeing them all here, Yashin asks if they too came here because of the cataclysm, and a big, black man claims he is right. This man is from the USA organization Freemason, who is worried what Li Zhongyang said might be the truth. Therefore, he wants to discuss what they need to do going forward. If it is really coming, it will be even more dangerous, especially for the US, since it has a lot more land than hunters. With this, Yashin questions where the underdog is right now, and the Freemason guy reveals he is currently meeting with Horus. And while the hunters have their little chat, the son of Desert is watching over his two sponsors as they discuss what Li Zhongyang said in the meeting. Horus, obviously a bit skeptical, asks Li Zhongyang if his uncle really said something about a cataclysm. He claims he was unable to hear anything about this and implores the underdog to tell him the truth. On the flip side, Li Zhongyang notices that the son of the desert is watching them, making it more difficult to lie to Horus in these circumstances. As such, he reveals that this wasn't the truth. However, it isn't a complete lie as well. But this just leaves Horus more and more confused. If so, then how does Li Zhongyang know of this approaching disaster? Consequently, Li Zhongyang is forced to show his hand. Firstly, he asks his sponsor, the Sky of Apocalypse, to keep the son of Desert in the blind, and his sponsor agrees to his request. With this, Li Zhongyang explains that Horus might be able to become a trustworthy ally to him, and hence, he has no choice but to place his trust in Horus. I mean, you shouldn't have blinded Horus's sponsor then. Just makes you seem shadier in my opinion. As such, he announces that he will tell Horus the truth if and only if he is able to keep a secret and Horus agrees to do so. As a result, Lee Jongyung comes out with the secret. I came from the future, he proclaims, leaving Horus completely baffled. Well, I would be too. Soon, the two of them get done with their meeting and head outside, where they are greeted by the sight all the hunters. There, Lee Jongyung asks why they all come here, and the Freemason representative, without wasting a single moment, immediately asks Lee Jongyung to come with him to America. In exchange, he promises to give him anything he desires. Getting directly into the topic. Good idea. However, Lee Jongyung never predicted such a development. He never thought the US would try and recruit him. But the Freemason representative explains America has far too few hunters in comparison to their kind masses. Assuming what Lee Jongyung said is the truth, their community will be in grave danger. And once again, he asks him to join his organization. Hearing this, even the other hunters are taken aback, contemplating if Lee Jongyung truly has so much worth. But, as it turns out, America isn't alone in this predicament. Even the Philippines and Australians try to recruit him. All of a sudden, an intense magical energy spreads throughout the entire room. This aura belongs to none other than Yashin, who also tries to bring Lee Jongyung back to Japan. Sensing this aura, Lee Jongyung comments on how Yashin has pressured everyone here with his powerful magical energy. However, suddenly, the hotel begins to shake violently. This leaves the hunters perplexed, wondering if there is an earthquake or something. But that's far from the case. As per the Freemason representative, a gate has just collapsed. And so it begins. On the other hand, sensing the collapse of the gate, the Nile hunters quickly gather up and go to defeat the monsters that the gate has let out. The monsters, after escaping, immediately begin killing civilians in the area, and the hunters summon their weapons to bring them down. Back at the hotel, the representatives watch the events unfold with looks of horror on their faces. They comment on how the gate collapsed so suddenly without any prior sign of it happening. In addition, Horus mentions that there weren't any gates existing nearby as well, leading to only one explanation. As per the Freemason guy, that means the gate collapsed the same moment it appeared. This guy deserves a Nobel Prize for his deduction skills. Because of this, there wasn't any time to evacuate the area or to prepare for any other safety measures to deal with such a situation. Nevertheless, Lee Jongyung suggests they take care of this incident for now, and they can talk at length later. And so, they all head out and defeat the monsters. However, this takes up a lot of time, and as the sun sets, they are finally done with the mission. There, Inchan reveals that more than 100 people have died in this ordeal. Thankfully, the hunters and the Nile were able to take action quickly, preventing any more deaths. Apparently, all this happened because the gate collapsed in a residential neighborhood. Moreover, since it collapsed the second it was made, there was no time to prepare. Is this the cataclysm that you talked about? She asked Lee Jongyung. No, surely not. Alas, this is not the case. This event is just a precursor to it, and Lee Jongyung tells Inchan to take everyone back to Seoul and work together with the White Tiger group to prevent such a catastrophe back home. In response, Inchan asks what Lee Jongyung will do in the meantime, and he explains this is a good opportunity for them. Heroes from all across the globe have gathered here and have even witnessed the precursor of the cataclysm with their own eyes. This will convince them to raise their defenses, and inevitably save countless more lives. But he reveals that the same events that took place in China will also occur in Korea. That is why it is important their homeland gathers all the hunters they can get. What's more, the president of the association is missing at this point in time. Hearing this, even Inchang is left baffled, but Lee Jongyung continues, stating he will send her, Gongs, Manhua, Funrer, and even he and Mu back using Bifrost. Right now, Korea desperately needs your help, he claims. As such, he sends them all back, deciding to stay behind by himself. In his mind, there's no time left. Although he isn't sure how things will play out from here on out, he needs to do his best to convince everyone and get them to band together. Consequently, he decides to call for a meeting and gathers up all the representatives. There, he addresses the crowd and proclaims that Set told him there are 3 precursors to this cataclysm. First and foremost is the collapsing gate, the thing they all have witnessed today. Gates will spontaneously appear and collapse. The second sign is the monsters will become even more powerful. Normally, C-rank ones could be dealt with by C-rank hunters, but going forward, B or even A-class hunters will be required to deal with them. And lastly, gatification will occur. Despite him not being too clear in the details, he speculates that there will be a large change in things, just like what happened in China, leaving everyone distressed. However, Li Zhongyang continues. According to him, just like a gate, access to these places will be sealed off and it will become full of concentrated magical power. This will lead to the death of many people, and just like with the second precursor, it will strengthen the monsters even further. Got him. That's going to be some seriously strong monsters. Hearing all this, the Australian representative asks if there is a way to stop this cataclysm, but even Li Zhongyang isn't aware of any such methods. All of a sudden, Yaxing intervenes. He questions what will happen after all the precursors end and the cataclysm begins. To this, in his mind, Li Zhongyang reveals that everything will change. The gates will be overflowing with more magical power, and because of this, the monsters will get even more powerful, killing many more. Thankfully, because of all this, more hunters will suddenly be born, equal to the amount of hunters that exist today. What's more, just like how the monsters get stronger, the hunters too will become stronger. Due to this, peace will eventually return. However, because of these stronger hunters who save humanity, the normal humans will end up becoming slaves. They will become akin to livestock to the hunters, who will rule over them. But it's not like he can tell this to everyone here, and hence, he decides to keep it under wraps. Yeah, he wants to do that stuff in private. He simply announces that they need to save as many people as they can. Despite the cataclysm looming near, they have a severe lack of hunters. Obviously, hunters will not pop out of thin air, and hence, they have to rely on regular people so they can hopefully keep their next generation of hunters safe. Hearing this, Yaxing finally understands the circumstances. He now knows an all-out war is incoming, and he, once again, asks the underdog to come to Japan with him, promising him a position equal to his. Hearing this, all the other representatives are perplexed. Furthermore, they are unable to believe that Yaxing would offer such a great deal to a rookie who still doesn't have an alias. He's still probably stronger than all of you though. Suddenly, the ground once again begins to shake violently, this time even more so than before. Sensing this, the hunters immediately realize that yet another gate has collapsed. Not only that, but this time the gate is at least an S-rank one. Understanding the dire straits, Horus immediately heads out first, jumping out the window and trying to deal with the problem as soon as possible. Following his lead, Li Zhongyang claims that he has given everyone all the information he can. In addition, he announces he has no intentions of transferring to another country and hopes that everyone can go back to their territories as soon as possible, since something similar to this might be occurring in their homelands as well. Rather, it probably already has happened. This warning leaves all the representatives with cold sweat running down their faces. On the other hand, the city is seen to be overrun by strong monsters who begin wreaking havoc and causing chaos throughout the town. These monsters rampage throughout the city, battling against the Nile hunters. However, the hunters seem to be having more trouble than usual. The hunters comment on how these trolls aren't what they usually encounter. The foes are much larger and faster. Regardless, they stand no chance in front of our boy Li Zhongyang, who comes flying down from the sky. Spear in hand, he lands a decisive strike on the troll's head, sending this beast to the afterlife in the blink of an eye. Getting to live another day, the hunter thanks Li Zhongyang, but our hero couldn't be less worried about words of gratitude. We will stop the monsters, he announces, telling the hunter to help the normal humans get to a safe area, and he obliges. Meanwhile, Li Zhongyang heads on to find his next target. As he scouts out the surroundings, he notices that the trolls are akin to the giants of Utgard in size. Moreover, despite them being trolls, they are too similar to the giants. This is the level of the monster who has come out from the collapsed S-rank gate. All of a sudden, he notices the gate hasn't closed yet, making him realize that there is still one monster that hasn't come out, the gate boss. Of course, it must be trying to free itself from the gate, and in order to save the city from utter annihilation, he has to chime in. "I have to stop it," he proclaims. With this, he heads towards the gate to bring an end to this ordeal as soon as possible. On the other hand, Yaxing is on the battlefield looking over at the underdog. As it turns out, Yaxing's comrade, the woman in the red yukata, prophesied that Li Zhongyang would help Yaxing in his mission, making them both connected by fate in Yaxing's mind. Suddenly, one of the trolls sneaks up behind him and launches an attack, but Yaxing is no mere pushover. In a split second, he slashes at his foe, cutting the troll into a million pieces. With this, he returns back to his original thought process, claiming, for some weird reason, that his heart begins to beat faster whenever he sees Li Zhongyang, almost as if the underdog is pulling him toward him. "Geez, get a room." I didn't think this manga was going to go down the BL road. As a result, he decides to chase after him. Protect your chastity, Lee Jong-young. This Japanese pervert is coming for you. Back at the gate, a gigantic troll begins emerging out. The sheer size of this enemy is enough to make Lee Jong-young tremble in his boots. He comments on how this troll makes the tall skyscrapers next to it look like toys, but luckily, it is still stuck and in the midst of trying to completely phase through. Using this as his opportunity, he decides to end things before he is able to make it completely through. Consequently, he charges up Sunflare and Maelstrom, launching his most powerful techniques at this opponent. However, much to his disbelief, even this isn't able to bring his opponent down. Even though the troll gets pushed back, that is all the damage he takes, and in response, it too tries to deal some serious damage to Lee Jong-young. Of course, it won't be this easy to bring down one of the strongest hunters in the world, and Lee Jong-young simply dodges the incoming punch. Moreover, using his swiftness, he shreds the troll's arm into countless pieces, and just as the monster begins to shriek in pain, Lee Jong-young seals the deal with a powerful headshot, leaving behind a hole in the beast's head. Despite the hardships, he defeats such a massive foe. But then, all of a sudden, he realizes he has messed up. If the troll's massive body falls over, all the people below will be crushed like ants. However, just as he anticipates the worst, out of nowhere, Yashin shows up. With his swordsmanship, he slices the troll into 1,000,000 pieces, preventing anyone from getting crushed into smithereens before landing gracefully on top of a building. Seeing this display, even Lee Jong-young is left taken aback. Bro, I doubt Yashin's intentions. Stay away from this guy. But this leads him to wonder why on earth someone as skilled as this isn't so well known in the future. Just then, something goes horribly wrong. Lee Jong-young suddenly gets a severe migraine, causing him to fall down from the sky and crash into the pavement below. Seeing this, Yashin comes over to his side, asking if he is alright. All of a sudden, Yashin's comrade, the woman in red, comes walking behind them. Seeing her here, Yashin remarks on how relieved he is that she is safe, but Lee Jong-young isn't so happy to see her. Suddenly, the Sky of Apocalypse begins paying close attention to the situation, making Lee Jong-young extremely wary. The moment she showed up, his head began to throb, and even his sponsor began paying attention to her. Just what is going on? Maybe the Sky of Apocalypse has taken a liking to her or something. Regardless, the hunters all band together and deal with this monster infestation. And soon enough, the crisis is averted. Lee Jong-young remarks on how despite this being an S-class collapsed gate, everything was handled quite quickly. And this is all thanks to the meeting, which brought over heroes from all across the world to gather in Cairo. Suddenly, he hears a voice behind him, complimenting his efforts. And this is none other than his bald friend Seong-gu. Even Horus shows up, thanking them both for their help in saving his people. With this, he asks if they are going to leave now, commenting on how they have really helped them out. Hearing this, Lee Jong-young just claims it was a pleasure working alongside Horus and the Nile. Inside his mind, he reveals that the reason he came here was to get rid of the variables he had caused. Ultimately, saving Horus led to a fierce battle with Set, leading him to grow significantly stronger. Throughout this trip, he has come to the realization that getting rid of all the variables is only going to end up making more of them, and hence, it is better if he stops. More importantly, as of now, the Son of Desert has stopped sponsoring Lee Jong-young. Nevertheless, because he was one of the few people Ra's light fell onto, he received a title. The Son of Desert decides to give him continuous firepower, claiming it will always help Lee Jong-young in times of trouble. This makes Lee Jong-young smile a bit, but seeing this, the Sky of Apocalypse looks pissed and glares at the Son of Desert. Is the Sky of Apocalypse an overly jealous girlfriend? On the other hand, Horus claims that he still wants the Nile to continue working with the underdog. However, he knows the situation has now taken a turn for the worse, and as a result, he is not asking for their help in this difficult time. Due to the series of collapsed gates, Egypt has sustained some serious damage, but Horus announces that they will one day regain their strength. In response, Lee Jong-young claims that if they are able to overcome the cataclysm, Egypt will surely see the light once again. Hearing these words, Horus proclaims that Lee Jong-young is the light of Egypt. He has helped them during their most difficult time yet and tells him to never forget this. Whenever you need us, Egypt will be there to help you, he states. Suddenly, Horus speaks up once again. He reveals that he has a favor to ask of Lee Jong-young, telling him that, due to the recent events, Egypt has taken a lot of damage and therefore, he will not be able to leave for quite some time. Consequently, since Lee Jong-young is going to be looking for Set anyway, He wants him to find Osiris' eye as well. But Li Jianyang is a bit curious as to how Horus can be sure of Set's survival. Although he assumes Set was still alive, Horus seems to be confident that this is a fact. In addition, he also senses some of Osiris' energy coming from Horus, leading him to believe this to be the reason Horus believes Set ran off with Osiris' eye. The reasoning seems kinda weak, but I'll let it slide. Nevertheless, with the ordeal behind them, Li Jianyang and Seoul finally head back to Korea. On their flight, Li Jianyang shares his worries with his bald friend, claiming everything must be connected. In response, Seoul tries to comfort Li Jianyang, telling him he is tasked to find Nile's greatest treasure. Furthermore, dealing with Set and the powerful person backing him up isn't going to be an easy task, but it's not like Li Jianyang doesn't know this. There, he asks why they are taking a plane even though they could have gone back using Bifrost in an instant. To this, Seoul explains that Bifrost isn't an unlimited power. They have been using it non-stop ever since England, and they even sent Inchang and the others back using it. Li Jianyang remarks on how Bifrost has helped save many people on his trip. But at last, they are finally almost in Korea now. With this, Li Jianyang asks how the investigation into Odin's sudden disappearance is going, and Seoul claims that their men are still trying to find him, though they haven't had any luck yet. You guys better get some good subordinates, some that aren't as useless as the current ones. The fact is, Odin disappeared while in his territorial rule, something that is unheard of. Nothing like this has happened before, and you can only hope nothing bad happens because of this. According to Li Jianyang, during this time, Korea desperately needs Odin and wonders what could have happened. But Seoul seems more concerned about the person behind Set, asking if is the man in black Li Jianyang talked about before. To this, Li Jianyang claims that they both seem to be the same person and wonders if maybe this man in black didn't exist until now. Is he an unwelcome visitor, like him, or is it just someone he has no knowledge of? Nonetheless, he thinks that Odin's disappearance and that mysterious man cannot be unrelated, and he would be right, though no one knows at this point. Just then, disaster strikes yet again. Seoul notices that a fire has broken out at Incheon International Airport. What's more, he finds numerous wyverns flying in the sky, and Li Jianyang immediately understands that the cataclysm has struck Korea as well. In a split second, he jumps down from the plane and begins killing the wyverns, striking them down one after the other. Even the Son of Desert helps him in this task, sponsoring him just when he needs the help. As such, he lands on the ground after defeating the flying monsters. The cataclysm, has it started, he questions, and he immediately gets an answer to this. Out of nowhere, a monster comes at him, almost as if telling him that his fears have come true. But Li Jianyang is unfazed. Without hesitation, he begins slashing away at his foe, and all the while, begins leveling up like crazy whenever he defeats another one of the beasts. However, no matter how many he brings down by himself, Li Jianyang is not able to slay each and every monster. As the city lies in ruins, he talks about how, due to the cataclysm, there is more magic power in the air. But because of this, the mana stream isn't working, rendering him useless while trying to find any survivors. All of a sudden, he hears a cry for help and immediately turns back, only to find a group of people being chased by a monster. Luckily, in the nick of time, Seoul arrives and strikes down this beast, killing it in the blink of an eye. With this, he asks if the civilians are alright, and they claim they are. In addition, they tell him that many other hunters are also fighting these monsters, pointing him in their direction. However, this is quite a troublesome situation. As per Seoul, these types of monsters will be difficult for average hunters to deal with, hence he has to hurry over to give them assistance. But if he leaves the civilians by themselves, they will surely meet their creator. Just then, Li Jianyang appears, claiming he will go over to help the other hunters while Seoul makes sure to save as many normal humans as possible. Consequently, they both part ways for the time being and he heads toward the battlefield. Alas, what he finds is the corpse of a White Tiger member. In his mind, he questions why the group is here of all places, but he doesn't get the luxury of figuring it out. Suddenly, Muspel, his spear, begins resonating demonic power, and frantically he begins surveying his surroundings. There he finds an ominous figure out in the distance, a figure he can only deduce to be the black-clothed man. Seeing this, he is taken by surprise and immediately unleashes his lunacy. As rage overwhelms him, he begins walking towards him in a confronting manner to square off. But out of nowhere, Inchang shows up, along with others of the White Tiger group. She explains that she didn't expect damage of such a level to occur, or else she would have brought all the hunters she could. Apparently, they came here to give Li Zhongyang a surprise welcome but got involved in helping clean up the situation. Regardless, Li Zhongyang isn't really interested. He's got bigger fish to fry. He thanks them for their thoughtfulness but orders them all to return first. In response, Inchang reveals they have already saved most of the survivors. Hearing this, he wonders if Inchang too has realized how dangerous this black-clothed man is. Nonetheless, he just tells her to go find and help Seong Gu with his mission, and she obliges, albeit hesitantly. "We will trust and wait for you. You must return to us," she proclaims as she takes her group and flees the scene. Alas, this time even Li Zhongyang isn't sure if he will be able to do so. Obviously, the black-clothed man is a fearsome opponent. He is the one behind the events at Utgard, and the man behind Set after all. In his mind, he might not be able to escape this man. However, there is always a possibility that his figure isn't the man in black. Nonetheless, there is only one way to be sure. I need to check if he is the person I think he is. And so, he dashes toward this figure at full speed, vowing he will snatch this black robe off of the figure. With this, the two collide, causing a huge explosion. On the other hand, Inchang, along with her group, are running away from the scene when one of the men reveals that a drake is ahead of them. Hearing this, Inchang prepares to break through this foe, but she is stopped by the others. They want to be the ones to take care of this beast instead, explaining that Inchang got injured while she was running around, helping the survivors. Of course, she wants to keep up her tough demeanor, thinking that a mere drake will not be able to stop her. However, before she can voice her thoughts, an immense wave of pain radiates through her body, forcing her to kneel on the ground. Did I lose too much blood? She wonders. Whatever the case might be, she has no choice but to rely on her subordinates for now. Inside her mind, although not at the same rate as Li Zhongyang, she knows she is definitely getting stronger. Good for you, I guess. Just then, her sponsor, Prince Charming, decides to reveal his true self to Inchang. The king of ogres, Siegfried, begins sponsoring her, sending great power coursing through her body. From the dark, gloomy sky, a beam of light hits her, and Inchang is glad that Prince Charming has finally revealed his true name to her. "I am overflowing with mana," she proclaims. Meanwhile, Li Zhongyang and the black figure are going at it, clashing with each other with full force. However, our hero doesn't seem to have any sort of upper hand. Rather, he looks to be disadvantaged. He reveals that he has used the power of lunacy, Goryuda, Mana Stream, and even the Dragon Heart, but even then, his foe was able to block such powerful strikes with ease. Even all his most powerful techniques stand no chance in front of this man, leading Li Zhongyang to shed cold sweats. "Such tremendous strength," he exclaims. All the while, the black figure remains indifferent, easily blocking the blows that would leave anyone else's others as a pile of ash. Not only that, but he is also able to send Li Zhongyang flying backward. However, that is not the end of this fight. Despite getting knocked back, Li Zhongyang regains his footing in a split second and dashes into attack again. In his mind, he knows that this is the most likely person behind the actions of Utgard and Set. As a result, he decides that he is going to unveil this figure's true identity by any means necessary, even though it is extremely dangerous. He will just have to risk it. "I will make sure to unveil that black robe," he vows as he jumps in for another clash. Alas, all of his efforts are futile. The figure just deflects all the incoming strikes, and, on the other hand, the power of the lunacy begins taking its toll on Li Zhongyang. Due to the demonic energy coursing through his body begins eroding. Out of nowhere, thorns and spikes start growing on his hands, but despite everything, he cannot even get close. There, Li Zhongyang notices something peculiar. The figure is not letting out any attack. Rather, he is just defending. He questions if this means his opponent has no intention of killing him. But, regardless, it doesn't really help his situation. As things stand, he cannot even scratch his enemy, let alone take off his robe, and the only option he has left is to let the demonic energy take control. Seeing this, the figure gives off a sinister grin, whereas Li Zhongyang feels the burden of this power on his body. Even the Dragon Blood Stone begins resonating with the Dragon Heart, and utilizing all this power, Li Zhongyang heads in for the kill. At last, his effort pays off, slightly that is. He manages to finally send his foe flying back a bit, making him glad. "My attacks are going through," he thinks while going in to deliver more strikes. They didn't go through Seb as well, just saying. But his dream and ambition swiftly end when the figure decides to use a little bit more power and once again sends Li Zhongyang flying. Or so he thought. This time, things are a bit different. As he gets sent crashing, Li Zhongyang manages to use his foot to flip over the figure's hood, enabling him to get a good look at the identity of this black-clothed man. Although he immediately puts his hood back up, seeing this figure's face, Li Zhongyang is taken aback. All the while, the figure isn't really fazed about his face being outed and begins powering up, unleashing a strong blast. On the other hand, after getting this surge of mana, Inchan is feeling a whole lot better. She tells her comrades to stand aside, claiming she will take care of this. Hearing the confidence in her words, her subordinates ask what happened. Sensing the incredible amount of mana she has gathered, regardless, she heads in for the battle. Excited to use this newfound power, she faces off against this monster, but before the fight begins, something intervenes. A hunter instantly kills off this drake, leaving Inchang astonished. She wonders who on earth could this be, and it is revealed to be none other than Xianggu, who claims he is here to help. Back toward Li Zhongyang, who is now kneeling on the floor, he condemns this figure, claiming it has fooled everyone up to this point. However, that is not the case. The figure reveals that he just saw a new future. All of a sudden, having reached his limit, Li Zhongyang collapses on the ground, whereas a crow comes into the scene, sitting on this man's shoulder. With this, the figure then heads towards Xianggu and Inchan, delivering them the unconscious Li Zhongyang. Seeing him in such a state, Inchang is left perplexed and hurries over to his side. But Xianggu seems to be more concerned about something else. He anxiously asks the figure, "Are you throwing aside Asgard?" In response, the figure reveals that Li Zhongyang will still come in handy. With this, he takes off his hood, revealing himself to be none other than Odin himself. Survive, he ominously tells his former subordinates. A short while later, Li Zhongyang's thoughts are explained. He knew he was no match for the black-clothed man, but despite this, he ran straight at him. Because of Muspel's strength and speed, he thought he could at least take off his robe and make a break for it, planning to use Merlin's necklace, which gave him extra speed in addition to mana steam to overcome the demonic energy. However, everything didn't go as planned. The demonic energy within the spear was much greater than he realized, and combined with the lunacy, its power was much greater than he ever imagined. The lunacy began taking over Li Zhongyang's body, but for some reason, he was able to overcome it with the help of Odin, who turned out to be the figure he was fighting against. He wonders if the man he was after this entire time was in fact Odin, but ultimately, things just don't add up for him. No, that man isn't Odin, he claims. With this, he opens his eyes and finds himself in a bed. Seeing him wake up, Inchang is relieved and tells him to rest some more. But Li Zhongyang has more important things on his mind. He reveals that the man in the black robe was Odin, and Xianggu, who is also present there, confirms this, claiming he saw it as well. All of a sudden, he summons the piece of cloth that he discovered after his fight with Set. What's more, he also pulls out something Odin gave him, revealing it to be the same item. To him, both their pieces seem the same, and even though it is just a gut feeling, Li Zhongyang is sure that they are not the same person. "I think Odin had received that robe from the man in the black robe," he remarks. Hearing this, Xianggu is obviously skeptical. He did see Odin as that man after all. To this, Li Zhongyang explains that Odin was surely there in Asgard with Xianggu when he was fighting Set, and it must have been the same when he went to China. The fact is, Odin never left his territorial rule. However, this isn't enough to convince Xianggu, who retorts that this is something that could have been taken care of with an alibi. They cannot be certain about this, and Li Zhongyang doesn't push it any further. At the end of the day, it is certain that Odin has joined hands with the black-clothed man. Their Xianggu reminds him of an important fact. After everything is said and done, Odin is just a crazy guy who gets turned on by the unknown. He is desperate to learn more and gets a kick out of satisfying his curiosity. However, he has still cast away Asgard and everything he had worked so hard to build. He questions what could have convinced him to do such a thing. What's more, he even saved Li Zhongyang when the demonic energy was devouring him. Later that day, Li Zhongyang and Xianggu watch over their city from a rooftop. There, Xianggu explains that he has done all he could to make preparations to deal with the cataclysm. For the areas that lacked hunters, he has set up more League Guild branches. His plan is to keep absorbing other guilds and make alliances with others. He has even turned the universities into shelters, and Li Zhongyang thanks him for believing in him and taking action. However, this isn't the time. Even now, there is a weak curtain covering the area, just like in China. They have already lost connection with the rest of the country as well, and they are now going through ghettoification. And so Li Zhongyang reveals his plan. He claims that here in Incheon, where the gate will collapse, I will go and deal with the ruler. Even though he doesn't know how to stop the cataclysm, he does now have a method to de-escalate it. Apparently, when the disaster begins, the gates that are already open will collapse, and they have to get rid of the reason the gates are collapsing. Of course, this won't stop the cataclysm, but by dealing with the rulers, they can buy a lot of time. Hearing this, Seonggu asks why Lee Jongyang didn't tell the other countries if he already had a plan prepared, but Lee Jongyang explains he doesn't know all the outcomes. He only knows how things will go in Korea. In his mind, he reveals he only knew of the path the Demon King walked, and hence, he knows how to de-escalate the cataclysm in Korea only. Although the Demon King's autobiography didn't have everything written, it did say he grew stronger after he defeated the ruler, and though history may have changed, he can only try his best to walk the path the Demon King did. On the other hand, somewhere else on the planet, Set, who is seen to still be alive, claims that the cataclysm in Egypt has begun. Even Odin seems to be present there, and he too states Korea has experienced the cataclysm. What's more, he has also met with Lee Jongyang, and they both inform this to their superior, the black-clothed man. I see, so everything has begun. This man exclaims as a shot of his face is shown. Revealing it is none other than Lee Jongyang. See, what did I tell you? Meanwhile, an elf is seen sitting on his throne, declaring, "The children are dying and they are coming to me." Suddenly, vines begin to appear on his hands, and he launches them towards a constrained human who is begging for mercy. As soon as the vines hit him, they begin taking over the human's body, and witnessing this, the elf makes a sinister expression. It turns out that this elf is intrigued by this place called Earth. As his forces prepare for battle, he announces, "Here, we will get rid of all the bugs and rebuild our kingdom," and his troops shout aloud, ready for the incoming war.